You eat but don't help, my son said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear through the open kitchen window. He said it like a joke at first, but his eyes weren't laughing. The words landed on the tile between us and rolled around like a dropped coin, loud, cheap, embarrassing. I was washing the casserole dish from last night, the one I made so the kids wouldn't come home to take out again, and the warm water fogged my glasses. I took them off, set them on the counter, and looked at him with clean eyes. He leaned on the fridge like he owned it, like he'd bought it with his bare hands instead of placing the delivery under my name because my credit was still good. He wore a carefully rumpled t-shirt from some golf brand I could never keep straight and a watch that had more dials than good sense. Behind him, the stainless steel appliances I'd paid for caught the morning sun like a showroom. "Excuse me?" I asked. It came out quiet. That's the way I say things when I should shout. Old habit from the hospital. Keep your voice soft so people tell you the truth. He shrugged, reached into the fridge, and pulled out a sparkling water. Popped the tab, didn't offer me one. "It's what it is, Mom. You're here, you eat, you enjoy the house, but when the mortgage hits or the property tax comes due, guess who's carrying it?" He jerked his chin toward himself. "This guy." I studied him for signs he didn't mean it. He looked steady. He always did when he'd rehearsed a thing. His wife Brooke glided in then, bare feet on my clean floor, her hair in one of those messy buns that take 20 minutes. She moved like the house was a stage and she was the star, soft robe, phone in hand, lips wrapped around a reusable straw. The robe looked expensive in the way of things meant to seem effortless. She didn't look at me first. She checked her reflection in the dark oven door, smoothed a flyaway, then gave me a smile that had the right number of teeth but not the right temperature. "Morning," she sang. "Quick heads up, the landscapers said they'll need the check today. And the pool guy texted about the salt cell. It's like, 1,000? 2? Can you handle that? Can you handle that?" I echoed, turning the phrase over like a seashell. "I thought you two were handling it." Her smile faltered and rearranged itself. She poked her straw into the ice again and clinked against the glass like that was a reply. "We're stretched this month," she said, moving to the island, piles of packages around her like other people keep plants. She tapped a nail on a printed invoice. "I mean, we've been carrying a lot. And we have the kids' school fundraiser. And we didn't plan to, take on extra." "Extra," my son repeated, as if the word were heavy and he'd been lifting it alone. "It's not fair, Mom. We're doing our best, but you're not helping." I could feel my own pulse in my fingers. The casserole dish gleamed like I'd been polishing it for company. They always said we and our when they meant me and mine. They said help when they meant pay. "I pay," I said softly. "I pay in quiet ways you don't put on lists." Brooke gave a quick laugh that sounded like a hiccup. "We're not saying you don't do anything. You're amazing with the kids. We just need a little financial support. Like a family. And not to be weird, but you eat out of the fridge too. Like groceries don't just appear." I nodded, because in this house they did just appear, when I bought them. "What's the actual number?" I asked. "For the landscapers. For the pool. For help." They shared a look. They were always sharing looks, private sentences passing between them while I stood with the punctuation. 3, my son said. 300. I asked. 3,000, Brooke said quickly. "And that's just this week. And maybe, just to be transparent, we should add 2 for the school donation, because we promised a platinum table." "It's optics." Optics. I was a nurse for 30 years. Optics meant how a wound looks when you clean it. In their language, optics meant a table with your name somewhere, and a name you hoped mattered to someone who mattered. "I see," I said. And I did. I saw it all, the way you see the outline of a stain long after you scrub it. The kids thundered in then, heading for the cereal like pirates at a chest. Mia 9, sharp-eyed, soft-voiced, always checking faces before she spoke. Leo 7, a trampoline in shoes. They hugged me without thinking about it, and the warmth of their little arms around my waist loosened something tight that had been knotted since the words "you eat but don't help" fell into my kitchen. "Grandma, our class needs cupcakes Thursday," Mia said. "I'll bring them," I said. "Real butter." "Grandma makes the good frosting," Leo announced to anyone who could hear it in any dimension. "See," Brooke said lightly, hands up, like she was telling the jury she rested her case. You're amazing. We just need to align on money. Adult stuff. Adult stuff. I dried the casserole dish and set it in the rack like a small shield. Then I turned and wiped my hands on the dish towel with the lemons on it, the one I bought last spring when the house still smelled like paint and promises. Since we're aligning, I said, let's be clear. This house, the mortgage, the taxes, the pool salt cell. Whose name do you think is on the deed? Silence hit the room so hard even the refrigerator's hum seemed to pause. My son's eyes darted, first to Brooke then back to me, as if there were a cue card somewhere in the backsplash. I mean all our names, Brooke said, aiming for breezy and landing on brittle. Obviously we're all in this together. My son found his footing. Mom, come on. Don't be petty. We all live here. I folded the towel, a small domestic motion that always calmed me. We do all live here, I said. But deeds don't care about couches. They care about signatures. He pushed off the fridge. You're not going to play games with paperwork. We agreed. We agreed I could stay here a while, I said. We never agreed I'd finance your lives. You promised to help, Brooke said, and her voice sharpened into something with edges. When we moved in last year, you said. I said family helps family, I finished for her. Not family feeds adults. He set the can on the counter too hard and it spit soda. You're making this ugly. No, I said. You did when you called me a burden in my own kitchen. His face changed then, slid into that stubborn teenager I lived with for too long. You eat but don't help, he repeated, slower, like a teacher with a bad student. How else should I say it? You could say thank you, I said. You could say sorry. You could say we forgot who built the stairs we're standing on. Something mean flickered across his face and settled like a bird on a wire. You didn't build this, he said, sweeping an arm around at the white cabinets, the quartz, the second mortgage I knew existed before they did. We did. Inside, something small and old sat up straight. The little nurse in me, the one who set bones and told truth, took my hand. I nodded once, like a woman who had made a decision and now only needed to carry it. All right, I said. You need 3,000 this week, 2 for optics. 5,000 to make your lives right-sized. That's what you're asking. Now you're getting it, Brooke said, smiling again. The smile belonged to someone selling a house with a crack under the rug. I'll take care of it, I said. His mouth softened in relief. He reached across the island and squeezed my fingers as if he'd won a prize. Thanks, Mom. Knew you'd come through. I always do, I said. Brooke brightened. Oh. And can we use your name for the table? Presented by Carter Family. It looks better for donations. Of course, I said. That afternoon, while Brooke arranged champagne flutes for a photo and my son took the kids to soccer, I drove to the county building in the quiet end of town where the air tastes like paper and patience. I had been there before many years ago, when my husband died and I had to become a person who knew things about filings. The clerks wear sweaters and drink tea. They speak like librarians. They know who owns what. I pulled a file from the bank box I keep under my bed, closing papers, tax statements, the deed. People think old women hide everything under mattresses. They're wrong. We tuck our futures into boring boxes with labels no one reads. The clerk at the recorder of deeds had hair the color of good coffee and a voice that made you feel you had done the right thing by showing up. What can I help you with, Ms. Carter? I said. I need certified copies of my deed. And I want the alert that pings me if anyone tries to touch my parcel. I want to put a note on it too, no transaction recorded without me standing here with my driver's license and a thumbprint if you'll take it. She smiled. We don't do thumbprints, but we can do the rest. While she clicked, she asked me the little questions patient people use to sew up a day. How's the weather on your side of the city? Do you want the copies mailed as well? I said fine. When she slid the certified pages across the counter, I ran my finger over the embossed seal like a person touching a name on a monument. In the parking lot, I held the papers against the steering wheel and read the line I already knew by heart, owner of record, Ruth Elaine Carter. Me. Not them. Not we. Not together. Me. On the way home I stopped at a bank branch and asked to speak to the manager. A young man with cautious eyes and a bright tie shook my hand and brought me to a small glass office that smelled like new carpet and lemon cleaner. I told him I wanted two things: a passphrase on every account that would make sense only to me, and no changes of any kind unless I showed my face. If anyone calls and says they're my son, I said, tell them Ruth said to pound sand. He laughed, then saw I wasn't really kidding, and typed a long note. At home, I made spaghetti for the kids and garlic bread from the good bakery. During dinner, Mia asked me why grown-ups like tables with names on them. I said sometimes people want to be seen more than they want to be good. She said that was silly and went back to making a volcano with her noodles. I loved her so much it hurt. I loved Leo too, even when he wiped sauce on his shirt and said it looked like a dinosaur bite. Their laughter filled the kitchen and the sharpness of the morning dulled to a steady ache. After they went to bed and Brooke posted a photo of a candle with a caption about gratitude, I went to my small room, the one with the twin bed and the chair that remembers the shape of my hips. I opened my bank box again and pulled out an old folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside it were papers with my husband's careful handwriting, the kind he used when he didn't want me to worry. Insurance. A note from the lawyer we used once. And something else, a clause I'd forgotten but never truly lost. When we bought this house, yes, this house, not theirs, even if Brooke's throw pillows matched the rugs, we'd set up a transfer on death designation to keep it out of probate if one of us passed. After he died, I had updated it. It named a charity dear to me, the hospital foundation where I'd worked, as the beneficiary of sale proceeds if I sold during my lifetime and chose to direct funds. At the time, I thought it was something I'd never use, a way to send a thank you to the place that held my nights. I had tucked it away like an old recipe card. I read the clause once, twice, then a third time, the way I used to read medication labels. Precise. Binding. Stronger than opinion. I ran my thumb along the edge of the paper until the skin grew warm. The idea came all at once and then again in pieces, falling into place with small clicks. They thought they were carrying me. They thought I was a guest in a house they'd built with vibes and hashtags. They didn't read. They didn't ask. They didn't know that the first signature on the first page is the one that matters when the music stops. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. In the morning, I called a realtor whose postcards had filled my mailbox for years with photos of smiling couples and the word sold in red letters. She answered on the second ring with a voice like a neighbor. I told her this might be the easiest listing of her career and the hardest day of my son's. I told her I wanted no sign, no open house, and no games. I told her I wanted her quietest buyers with the cleanest money and the fastest close. She asked me for the address. When I told her, she whistled low. That's a 2-point-something all day, she said, and I could hear her doing math in her head. If we price it right, maybe more. You sure you're ready? Yes, I said. I'm ready. Brooke floated into the kitchen around 10 with her robe tied in a bow like a package. Remind me about the landscapers, she asked, almost singing it. They won't come if we don't pay by noon. I'll handle it, I said, and I turned the page of the newspaper even though I wasn't reading it. My heart beat hard but steady. Funny, the way the body knows when you're about to step onto a stage you didn't ask for. When my son came home at lunch, he kissed my cheek like he hadn't thrown me under a bus the day before. He asked if I could pick up the kids at 3 because Brooke had content, and his meeting ran long. I said I could. I wiped the counter. I made a grocery list. I learned the calm a person wears when the fuse is already lit and you're the only one who hears the soft hiss. That afternoon, the realtor came by in a sensible car and walked the house with a quiet efficiency that made me like her immediately. She opened cabinets and nodded. She looked at the yard and wrote a number on her pad. 2.4, she said. No problem. Cash buyers on Red Bluff Lane lost out last week. They'll jump. We stood in the kitchen I had watched them pose in. She put her palms on the island like she could push the deal into the wood. You'll need to sign the listing. We'll keep it confidential. No sign, no MLS. We do it like an old-fashioned handshake in a small town. I signed. My hand didn't shake. We picked a Thursday for showings, 2 hours only by appointment, while Brooke went to yoga and my son to the gym, and I took the kids for ice cream even if they hadn't eaten their carrots. By Friday morning, the offer sat in my inbox, $2,400,000 even, 5-day close, buyer pays for everything including their own joy. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. Then I called my lawyer. Then I called the hospital foundation. Then I called myself a cab to the title office, where the women in sweaters stamped things with a sound that felt like a door locking the right way for once. I didn't tell my son. Not yet. Not until it was too late for optics. Because if you tell a person like that too soon, they spin. If you wait, they float, and then they drop. He said I eat but don't help. He forgot whose name the house answers to when a notary raises a hand and a pen moves across a line. And now, before I tell you the day the moving trucks came without warning, and the way his face looked when he realized the house he bragged about was never his castle to command, tell me this. If your child called you a burden at your own sink, would you keep feeding him, or would you quietly sell the floor out from under his pride and let him learn how to stand? The house felt different the next morning, not louder, not emptier, just hollow in a way that told me something inside it had stopped pretending. The papers were signed, the escrow open, the countdown ticking quietly in the background. I had 5 days before everything changed. My son Evan came into the kitchen humming, wearing his golf shirt and that cologne that smells like expensive wood and poor decisions. He poured himself coffee into a mug that said "Best Dad Ever," a Father's Day gift for me years ago when I still believed in small sentimental lies. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, cheerful like the morning before hadn't happened. "You were quiet last night." "I'm fine," I said. "Just thinking." He grinned. "About what?" I smiled back. "About how fast things can change." He didn't hear the warning in it. He never did. Brooke floated in around 9, phone in one hand, smoothie in the other, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my first car. "We need to talk about dinner," she said without hello. "The school gala is Friday, and the caterer wants a head count for the VIP table. You're still okay to cover it, right?" "Of course," I said smoothly, setting down my tea. "What's the total?" She hesitated, always the brief pause before a lie. "It's, $1,500 for the table. But it's good exposure, you know? Networking. Optics." "That word again," I murmured. "You love that word." She laughed lightly. "Well, in our circles, it matters." I nodded slowly, folding my hands. "You know what else matters, Brooke? Reading fine print." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "Nothing," I said, smiling faintly. "You'll see soon enough." While they planned their gala and photo ops, I had my own small show running in the background. The realtor, Claire, kept me updated every few hours. "Everything's clean," she said on the phone. "Buyers wired the earnest money. Titles confirmed, no liens, and your deed is clear as day. You'll close by Friday afternoon." "Perfect," I said. "Let's keep it quiet." "Of course," she said. "This stays between us until the funds land." By Wednesday, the house had its own heartbeat, a kind of nervous electricity under the walls. I caught Brooke whispering into her phone more than once, pacing near the pool with that tight smile she wore when money ran short. At lunch, Evan mentioned selling one of the cars temporarily, because the market was weird right now. He didn't notice me watching him over the rim of my glass. "Everything all right?" I asked. "Fine," he said too quickly. "We're just managing things. Don't worry about it." I wanted to laugh. Don't worry about it, the 4 words children use when they want their parents blind. That night, I made stew for dinner. Comfort food. The kind that simmers long enough to make people stay home and smell it. We ate in silence, and for the first time in years, I felt like the silence belonged to me. After the dishes were done, I went to my room, opened my small writing desk, and began a letter. "To my son, by the time you read this, the house will no longer belong to any of us. You said I eat but don't help. So I helped myself, to peace. You'll survive. You always do. But maybe this time, you'll learn the value of foundation, not the one under your feet, but the one inside your chest." I sealed it in an envelope and slid it into the drawer of his old nightstand, where he once kept his baseball cards and half-finished dreams. Thursday morning brought the first real test of my poker face. Brooke burst into my room without knocking, waving her phone. Why did I just get an email from the HOA about a title transfer? I turned from the window calmly. "Because there's going to be one." Her eyes widened. "What does that mean? Did you refinance without telling us?" "No," I said. "I sold it." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was almost beautiful, the first honest silence I'd seen from her since she married my son. You sold the house? She finally breathed. This house? Our house. My house, I corrected softly. And yes, it closes tomorrow. She blinked, as if the words didn't fit the world she lived in. You can't do that. I can, I said, and I did. She clutched the doorframe like it might stop her from falling. Evan's going to lose his mind. The kids, where are we supposed to go? Anywhere you can afford, I said. I hear apartments downtown are quite nice. Her face flushed red, then pale. This is insane. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm correcting a misunderstanding. Evan came home an hour later, his voice already raised before he even reached the living room. Mom, what the hell is this about you selling the house? I looked up from the couch, teacup in hand. Oh good. She told you. You can't just. I can, I said evenly. And I did. He stared at me like I'd just confessed to arson. You've lost it. You've completely lost it. This is my home. My family's home. No, I said, setting the cup down gently. This is the house your father and I bought 30 years ago. The one I paid off when you were still borrowing gas money. You've lived here rent-free for 2 years. You've insulted me in my own kitchen. You told people I'm a burden. That's not exactly what you said, I cut in, my voice sharper now. You eat but don't help. Remember. His jaw worked, but no words came out. I stood slowly, the weight of years steady on my shoulders but not bending me. So I helped. I sold the house for $2.4 million. The funds go to the hospital foundation in your father's name. The same man who built your first treehouse with his own hands while you watched from the porch because it was too hot outside. Evan's face crumpled between rage and disbelief. You gave it away? I gave it meaning, I said. Brooke stepped forward, trembling. You can't just throw us out. The kids. The kids have grandparents who love them, I said. They'll always have me. But they won't grow up thinking money erases kindness. That night, the house was full of whispers. Doors closing. Angry phone calls. Brooke's muffled crying behind the locked bathroom door. Evan pacing the hallway like a man counting mistakes. I sat by the window in my room, knitting by lamplight, the motion steady and slow. The yarn was soft, the opposite of the scratchy scarf Brooke once gave me the Christmas she forgot to buy me a real gift. I'd saved that scarf too. I planned to leave it on the kitchen counter tomorrow with a note, for optics. Around midnight, Evan knocked. Mom, he said softly. Please. I didn't look up. Please what? Don't do this. We'll pay rent. We'll pay you back. Rent, I repeated. That's new. He exhaled shakily. I'm sorry, okay? I said stupid things. I was stressed. Brooke. Stop, I said gently. You're not sorry yet. You're scared. Sorry comes later. He stared at me, eyes wet, mouth opening and closing like a boy again. For a second, I almost softened. But then I remembered the way he'd looked at me across that kitchen island, soda can fizzing between us, as if I were a bill he forgot to pay. I went back to knitting. Go get some sleep, Evan. Big day tomorrow. He lingered a moment longer. Then left. Friday morning was clear and cold. The kids were already at school. Brooke had gone to her yoga class, maybe to cry, maybe to plan. Evan sat at the table, head in his hands. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Of course, I said, stirring my tea. He looked up, his face drawn. Do you really hate us that much? Hate. I shook my head. No. Hate would mean I still wanted something from you. He swallowed hard. Then why? Because I needed to remember who I was before you started deciding what I was worth. He looked away, and for the first time since he was little, he had no answers. Just silence. The doorbell rang. The realtor stood there with a clipboard and a polite smile. Behind her, a well-dressed couple waited, the buyers. Evan froze as they stepped inside. Wait, what is this? Final inspection, Claire said pleasantly. We'll be quick. Brooke returned right then, yoga mat under her arm, eyes wide as she saw the strangers walking through the house. What is going on? I stood, smoothing my cardigan. The closing is in an hour. I suggest you start packing. Brooke's mouth trembled. You're throwing us out. No, I said. You're leaving. Evan turned to me, his voice breaking. You can't just walk away like this, Mom. I'm not walking away, I said, stepping toward him. I'm walking back to myself. He shook his head, speechless. The buyers thanked me for my time, and Claire handed me the final envelope. The closing funds would be wired by end of day. I thanked them kindly and watched as they left. The front door closed behind them with a sound that felt like a book ending. That night, after the movers came for the buyers' furniture and the last of Brooke's designer boxes were stacked by the garage, I sat alone in the empty living room. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and memory. I ran my hand over the marble counter one last time. Every scratch, every chip, I'd lived enough life here to know nothing perfect lasts. The kids would visit me on weekends. They'd still bake cookies and spill frosting on my floor. But the era of being used, of being called a burden, was over. Tomorrow, they'd drive away to a smaller place. A rental, maybe. Somewhere with thin walls and fewer mirrors. And me? I'd moved to a quiet cottage by the water, one the hospital foundation arranged for me while they handled the paperwork. I smiled, small and sure. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't fire. It's real estate. But before I tell you what happened when the $2.4 million transfer hit the account, and the call my son made when he finally realized who'd really been helping all along, ask yourself. If someone you raised used your home to belittle you, would you stay and be grateful for crumbs? Or sell the roof over their heads and make them remember who built it in the first place? The morning after the sale, the house was no longer mine, on paper at least. Yet it still smelled faintly of my cinnamon candles and the detergent I'd used for years. Funny how walls keep your scent long after your name is gone from the deed. The wire cleared at 9:04 a.m. sharp. The hospital foundation called to confirm receipt, $2,400,000, to fund a new cardiac wing in my late husband's name. You've done something remarkable, Mrs. Carter, the director said. I hung up smiling, not because I felt proud, but because I finally felt finished. But endings never come cleanly, not when family's involved. By noon, Evan had found his way to my new address, an old brick duplex by the bay. I'd moved there 2 nights before the closing quietly, with just a few boxes and my knitting bag. He didn't knock politely this time. He pounded, 3 short bursts, the kind of knock that used to make me drop whatever I was holding when he was little. Mom. I opened the door calmly, holding my tea. You found me fast. He looked wild, hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. Do you know what you've done? Yes, I said. I sold a house. You destroyed my life. His voice cracked, half rage, half panic. We had plans, Brooke's business, the kids' tuition. Your plans, I interrupted softly. All of them built on something you didn't own. You could have just asked for rent, he shouted. I did, I said. Respect. That was the rent. You couldn't afford it. He froze, breath heavy. I could see the realization settling in, the kind that has weight, like wet sand in your lungs. This isn't you, he said finally, shaking his head. You don't do stuff like this. I smiled faintly. Maybe I always could. You just never thought I would. Later that afternoon, Brooke called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity is a stubborn friend. Her voice was tight, brittle. Ruth, she began, then sighed. Look, I know things got out of hand. I said things I shouldn't have. We all did. But this? Selling the house? You blindsided us. I didn't blindside anyone, I said. I just stopped standing in your shadow. She huffed softly, trying to sound composed. Do you know how this looks? The neighbors are asking questions. The kids' school thinks we're bankrupt. Do you want them to think we're bad parents? I almost laughed. You're worried about optics again? I'm worried about stability, she snapped. You're ruining your grandchildren's lives. No, I said firmly. I'm making sure they grow up knowing money doesn't make you moral. There was silence on the line, thick and ugly. Then quietly she said, "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Enjoying? I paused. No, Brooke. I'm remembering how peace feels. She hung up. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again, an unknown number this time. I let it ring twice before answering. "This is Detective Harris with the County Sheriff's Department," a calm voice said. "Ma'am, we just wanted to verify a report regarding a property transfer you executed last week." My lips curved. "Ah. My son's work, I assume." "Yes, ma'am," he said. "He claims you sold a shared property without his consent." I chuckled softly. "Would you like a copy of the deed, officer? Or should I send you the 30 years of tax records in my name?" He hesitated. "That won't be necessary, ma'am. I can already see you were sole owner. We just have to file the complaint." "Of course," I said. "Do make sure to include that I raised the complainant and paid for his college." Full context. When the detective laughed, I knew I'd be fine. But my son wasn't done yet. He wasn't the kind to let dignity end a fight. By Friday, he'd gone to social media. A long post appeared on his account: "Imagine your own mother selling your home behind your back. Some people only pretend to love you until they can profit off your pain." It was accompanied by a picture of the house, my house, empty and echoing. The comments rolled in: sympathy, confusion, judgment. A few friends texted me links, worried I'd see it. I saw it, all right. And for a moment it stung, because humiliation is still humiliation, no matter how old you get. But then I read one comment from someone who knew better. Didn't she buy that house? Maybe respect goes both ways. I closed my phone. Some truths defend themselves. That evening, a small envelope slid under my front door. Inside was a folded note in my son's handwriting. "I don't know how to fix this. Brooke's gone. The kids ask questions I can't answer. I was wrong, Mom. Please, just talk to me." For a long time, I sat staring at it. I thought of the little boy who once left dandelions on my nightstand, who used to run to me when the thunder scared him. I thought of how that boy turned into a man who called me a burden because he couldn't see my worth unless it paid his bills. I picked up my pen and wrote back. "Evan, I'll always love you. But love doesn't mean I'll let you hurt me. Some lessons cost money. Others cost peace. You lost both this month. I hope you earn them back someday. Mom." I left it in the same envelope and slid it back under his door later that night when I saw his car parked outside. He never knocked. He just took the letter and drove away. Days turned into weeks. The foundation sent me updates about the hospital project. They planned to name the new atrium after my late husband, Robert. There would be a plaque, a dedication ceremony, photos. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my friends from church. I didn't need applause. I already had what I wanted, silence that wasn't heavy. Sometimes I'd see Brooke at the grocery store. She'd glance away quickly, pushing her cart down another aisle. Once, I saw Evan sitting in his car outside my new place, engine running but never parking. He didn't come up. Maybe he was afraid of what he'd see, his mother, alive and well without him holding the reins. I let him drive off each time. Some reconciliations only grow after distance softens the pride. One afternoon, the kids called from Brooke's phone. "Grandma, we miss you," Mia said. "I miss you too, sweetheart. When can we come over?" Leo asked. "Mom says maybe next week." "Next week sounds perfect," I said, smiling. "We'll bake cookies again." I heard Brooke in the background, quiet. She didn't interrupt. Maybe that was her version of truce. When the call ended, I looked around my small living room, simple furniture, soft light from the bay window, the gentle hum of peace filling the air. I had lost my house, my illusion of family, and all the noise that came with both. But I'd gained something much rarer, respect, my own. Before I tell you what happened months later at the hospital ceremony, when my son walked in uninvited and saw his father's name engraved above, "Donated by Ruth Elaine Carter," ask yourself this. If the price of peace was letting your family call you cruel, would you still pay it? Or would you let them keep you chained to their comfort just so they'd keep calling you kind? The hospital atrium gleamed like new money, marble floors polished enough to catch your reflection, bright skylights spilling gold across the plaques on the far wall. I stood near the edge of it all, a small figure in a sea of donors in tailored suits and pastel dresses. A soft brass band played something polite. Somewhere behind me, a photographer whispered, "Ready in 5." It had been 3 months since I sold the house. 3 months since I'd spoken to my son. And now here I was, invited to the dedication of the Robert Carter Healing Center, a name I hadn't heard spoken aloud in years without bitterness or pity. They'd asked if I wanted to make a speech. I'd said no. I'd done enough explaining in my life. My actions could speak for me now. A young woman in a navy dress approached, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Carter, we'll call you up after Dr. Reynolds' remarks, all right? Just a few words for the donors." "Just a few," I agreed. "That's all I've got left." She smiled, not understanding, and drifted away. I looked at the plaque again, the engraved gold letters catching light, the Robert Carter Healing Center, gifted with love and gratitude by Ruth Elaine Carter. For a long time, I just stood there, touching the cool metal. I remembered the day Robert and I first walked into that hospital, scared but holding hands. He'd said, "If we get through this, Ruthie, we'll give something back." I guess it took me 20 years and a betrayal to make good on that promise. The microphone crackled. Dr. Reynolds started his speech, something about legacy, generosity, and community. I half listened, mostly just breathing in the clean hospital scent. And then, just as he said my name for the first time, a sound cut through the polite applause, the slam of a door, followed by hurried footsteps. Every head turned. My son was standing at the entrance. He wasn't dressed for the occasion. His jacket was wrinkled, tie askew, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept in days. He looked smaller somehow, deflated, as though the world had finally caught up to him. For a second, nobody moved. Then he started walking toward me, each step loud against the marble floor. "Mom," he said. His voice carried through the room, echoing off the glass walls. Dr. Reynolds faltered, glanced toward the event coordinator. Someone whispered, "Should we?" But I raised a hand. "It's all right," I said softly. "Let him come." When he reached me, he stopped just short of the microphone. The silence between us was thick enough to touch. "Why didn't you tell me?" he said quietly, his voice trembling with something between anger and grief. "Why didn't you tell me what you were doing?" I took a slow breath. Would it have changed anything? "Yes," he said. "Maybe." "No," I corrected. "You would have talked me out of it. You would have told me it was sentimental, or reckless, or unfair. You would have found a way to make it about you, like everything else." His eyes flashed. "That's not fair, Mom. I was trying." "You were trying to build a life," I interrupted. "I know. But you were building it on someone else's foundation." The crowd had gone still. The only sound was the hum of the air vents. "You humiliated me," he said suddenly, voice cracking. "You made me look like a fool in front of everyone I know." I stepped closer, so he could see the truth in my eyes. "You did that yourself, Evan. When you decided I was only useful for what I could pay for." He swallowed hard. "I was angry. We were drowning. You had the power to help." "I did help," I said quietly. "Just not in the way you wanted." He looked down at the floor, jaw trembling. For a moment, he was my little boy again, the one who used to cling to my apron strings and say, "Don't let go yet, Mom." "I lost everything," he whispered. I nodded. "Sometimes that's what it takes to find yourself." He stared at the plaque, reading the words slowly. "Dad's name." "Yes," I said. "He wanted to give back to this place. I made sure he did. Now he'll help more people than either of us ever could with that house." There were tears in his eyes now, and I felt something in my chest crack open, not forgiveness yet, but a softer kind of ache. "You gave it all away?" he asked again, like he couldn't believe it. "I gave it where it belonged," I said. "And I kept enough for me to live quietly. That's all I ever wanted." The reporter nearby clicked her camera softly, the shutter sound punctuating the space between us. I turned to face the crowd, dozens of strangers watching a private storm play out in public. "Since we've already started talking," I said, stepping to the microphone, "I'll say just a few words." The room hushed. "I didn't plan to speak today," I began, my voice steady but low. But maybe it's time to tell you what this gift really means. My husband and I built our home on hard work, not inheritance. We raised a family there, and for a long time, I thought that house was our legacy. But it wasn't. I paused, meeting Evan's eyes. The real legacy is what we leave behind when we stop holding on to what hurts. When we stop mistaking things for love. A murmur ran through the audience. I sold a house, I continued, but what I really did was buy back my peace. And I gave that peace to the place that once saved my husband's life. Applause began, hesitant at first, then stronger, filling the space. Evan stood still, hands clenched at his sides, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. When the noise faded, I turned back to him. You can hate me for what I did, Evan. You can think I was cruel. But someday, you'll understand that the only thing worse than being betrayed is pretending it didn't happen. He didn't answer. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time, I saw his pride deflate entirely. He whispered, I don't hate you. I know, I said softly. You just don't know how to love me yet. He took a step back, eyes glistening, then turned and walked out of the atrium. I didn't follow. Dr. Reynolds approached me afterward, voice gentle. That was powerful, Mrs. Carter. It was overdue, I said. The photographer asked for one more picture beside the plaque. I smiled politely for the camera, the flash bright and brief. When it was done, I walked outside into the sunlight. The air felt clean, almost new. In the parking lot, I saw Evan sitting in his car, head bowed against the steering wheel. I stood there for a moment, just watching, the same way I used to when he fell off his bike and refused to cry. Then I turned away, leaving him to learn balance on his own again. Before I tell you what happened weeks later, when a small envelope arrived in my mailbox with my son's handwriting on it and the words "You were right" inside, let me ask you this. If you had the chance to reclaim your dignity in front of the world, would you take it, even if it meant breaking your child's pride to finally rebuild your own? The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked among bills and charity flyers. The envelope was plain, no return address, no markings, just my name written in my son's unmistakable handwriting, the same looping R he'd copied from me when he was little. I held it for a moment, weighing whether to open it or let it sit in the drawer like all the other unresolved things between us. But curiosity is a muscle that never weakens with age. I tore it open. Inside was a single page. The handwriting was uneven, smudged in places where tears or coffee had blurred the ink. Mom, I've been angry at you because it's easier than being ashamed. You didn't just sell a house, you forced me to see what I'd become. Brooke left. The kids are with her most of the time now. I don't blame you anymore. You were right. I forgot how to stand on my own 2 feet. I'm trying to fix that. If you ever want to talk, I'd like that. Love, Evan. I sat at my small kitchen table, the morning light spilling through the window, hitting the letter just right so that the ink shimmered faintly. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but instead I felt a deep, quiet calm, like a wave had finally rolled back after years of battering the shore. Forgiveness is a strange thing. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets or fanfare, it arrives like a soft knock at the door, patient and unassuming. That weekend, I drove to a small coffee shop in town, the one Evan used to take me to on Sundays when he was in college. He'd called the night before, his voice cautious but sincere. Maybe we can meet, Mom. No big talk, just coffee. I agreed. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting by the window. His hair had more gray than I remembered, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He looked up, stood immediately, and for a second, I saw both the man he'd become and the boy who used to cling to my hand. Hi, Mom, he said softly. Hi, Evan. We sat. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, just uncertain, like we were both trying to remember how to breathe in the same rhythm again. He cleared his throat. I heard about the hospital wing. It's beautiful. I saw pictures online. I smiled faintly. Your father would have liked it. He nodded. I think so. There was a pause. Then he said, almost whispering, I'm sorry. Those 2 words, small, simple, landed like a stone dropping into still water, rippling through every hurt I'd buried. I know, I said quietly. I was angry too. Angry that I raised someone who forgot the difference between help and handouts. He winced. I deserved that. We sat there for a long while, two people rebuilding something without knowing what shape it would take. When the waitress came by, he paid for both coffees without looking at me. "Don't argue," he said when I opened my mouth. "It's not about money. It's about showing up." I let him. That small act meant more than any grand apology could. Later that afternoon, he walked me to my car. The wind carried the scent of salt from the bay, and the sun was just beginning to set, painting the world gold. "I talked to Brooke," he said. "She wants to bring the kids by next weekend. Would you be open to that?" "Of course," I said. "They should know where they come from, even if it took their parents a while to remember." He smiled a little. "You haven't changed." "I have," I said. "You just never looked close enough to notice." He laughed softly, and for the first time in years, it didn't sound forced. Before he left, he hugged me, tentative at first, then tighter, like he was afraid I might disappear again. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For not hating me when I gave you every reason to." I didn't answer. Some truths don't need to be said out loud. The following week, I returned to the hospital for the official unveiling of the plaque. It was smaller than the first ceremony, just a few staff members, some local press, and a quiet afternoon light streaming through the atrium glass. I placed a small bouquet of daisies beneath my husband's name. Then, on impulse, I took a folded note from my purse and slipped it behind the flowers. It read, "We did it, Robert." The house gave life again. As I turned to leave, I saw Evan standing near the entrance with his kids. Mia held his hand, and little Leo waved at me shyly. My heart caught in my throat. "Grandma!" they both shouted. I crouched down, letting them run into my arms. Their laughter filled the atrium, chasing away every shadow that had lingered for months. Brooke was there too, standing a little apart, her expression uncertain but not hostile. She gave me a small nod. That was enough. Evan joined us, looking around the gleaming walls. "It's beautiful, Mom," he said softly. "It's peaceful," I corrected. "There's a difference." He nodded, understanding more than I expected. As the kids wandered off to look at the fountain, he turned to me. "I know I can't undo what I said that day." "No," I said. "You can't. But you can remember it, and do better next time." He smiled sadly. "I will." We stood together, watching the light dance across the plaque. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the mother he'd abandoned or the woman who'd been taken for granted. I just felt whole. That night, back in my quiet home, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. Outside, the moon reflected over the bay like silver glass. I thought about the house I'd sold, the laughter, the arguments, the years that lived within its walls. It wasn't just brick and wood. It was a chapter. And chapters end so new stories can begin. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't waiting for apologies or grand gestures. I'd done what I needed to do, protect my peace and remind my son who I really was. As I sipped my tea, my phone buzzed with a text from Evan, "Made the kids pancakes tonight. Used your recipe. Didn't burn them this time." A picture followed, Mia grinning with syrup on her cheeks, Leo flashing a thumbs up. I smiled, typing back, "You're learning, son. Keep practicing." For a long while, I just sat there in the glow of the phone screen, feeling something warm spread through my chest. Not triumph. Not victory. Just love that had survived the fire and come out tempered, stronger, real. If there's one thing life has taught me, it's this: sometimes the only way to save your family is to let them lose you for a while. Because when they finally come back, it's not for your money, or your home, but for you. And that's a kind of wealth no price tag will ever touch.